Take a look at these graphs and let's notice all the similarities and differences they have. So how are they the same? Well, one thing that they're all the same in is they all have the same range. Okay? The same range, which is 10, from 1 to 11. That's a measure of spread. You can see that their shapes are very different. We have a graph here that is unimodal and skewed right. We have another one that is uniform. So I think I'll go ahead and write this. Unimodal, skewed right. We have a graph that is uniform, which means about the same all the way across. We have a graph that is unimodal and symmetric. We have a graph that is bimodal and symmetric. As a matter of fact, the uniform graph is also symmetric because it looks the same on either side of the center. We have some centers that are the same and some centers different. Graphs B, C, and D have the same center. Okay. A has a different center. So you can see the centers here. Since these are uniform, it's right down the middle. Okay, so we've talked about range, which is a measure of spread, and they're all the same. We've talked about some of them have the same center, but not all, and that they have mostly all different shapes. I want to go back to this idea of the same range. This range is about all that we've talked about as a measure of spread so far. And you can see that they all have a range of 11, but when you think about how the data is spread around, how it's distributed, you can see that the spreads are very different. Like here, there's kind of, the data is fairly equally spread across all the values. You know, it has about the same amount of values from 1 through 11. Here you can see that there is a big cluster of data in the smaller values of the data, 1 through 3 and so forth, and not very much in the higher values. Here it's very symmetric, but the majority of the data is very close to the center, whereas here the majority of the data is very close to, very far away from the center with very little in the center. So we need another type of way to describe spread that helps differentiate between some of these different types of graphs. Another way to look at this would be here we have these quiz scores. We have a mean of 10 points, and we have a we can talk about the range. Like this has a range of only 4, whereas this has a range of 18. So we can tell that even though both classes did about the same average score, this class has a much wider spread than this. But still, even with a range, I wouldn't exactly know in a range if maybe there were a lot at the edge and none at the middle, or some at the middle and just outliers. So I don't really know what the range is. So I could have something maybe where there's a cluster in the middle and then one out here, and that would have the same range as something that looks like this. And that still does, and they could have the same average, and that still doesn't tell me a whole lot about the spread. So we need another statistic. We need another way to measure spread, and that's what we're going to talk about today.